So, good afternoon. I'm Tiffani Jeffries Williams, and I go to church here at His Village. I'm struggling. But I just wanted to share a message I have just regarding my pregnancy journey with you today. So I've always grown up loving kids. I was always the cousin or the family member who would always be playing with the kids at family reunions or family events, because it always brought me a lot of joy to spend time with them. And I never wanted to feel, we have the kids table, and I never wanted kids to feel neglected or not part of the group. So that's something that's always been important to me. So spending time with kids has just been part of my life journey. So when I got married, or people would always say oh, you're going to be the first one to get married and have kids, or, oh, you're going to be such a great mom. And, people speak those things into your life, and you think, yeah, I am going to be a great mom, and maybe I will be the first one to get married. And then life happens, and the way that God has it to happen may not be what you think is going to happen. And so I got married at 27. I met my husband at a wedding. Two of our good friends got married, his best friend and one of my good friends from college. And we were in the wedding party together. And they actually thought we were going to meet other people in the wedding. That's what they had planned. And we both were really just wanting to be there to support our friends and trying not to get distracted by the marriage talk and meeting someone. And so all of that was great, so much so that we didn't even get to talk at the wedding. It was actually later after the wedding that we met via social media, which was great. Or we got to talk because of social media, I should say. But again, I was 27 when I got married. I thought I had done everything right. I belonged to the church. I was abstinent until marriage. All these things that you think, oh, this, all these things I do right, and then I'll get the outcome that I want and I think I deserve. And so when we got married, we didn't want children at first. We waited because we had been long distance for our entire relationship. And so we wanted to wait to just be able to spend time together and enjoy that experience before adding kids to the mix. Well, we didn't think it would be 8 years later that we would actually be able to conceive our first child. And we actually had difficulty conceiving. We went to the doctors. We tried to figure out what was going on. They suggested IVF. And it took us some time to actually accept that decision to try IVF. So we again waited, and then we pursued that option. And it was great. We go to the doctors. They're like, oh my gosh, you have these beautiful eggs. There are so many of them. This is going to be perfect. We're going to fertilize all of them. And so we did all of that, and we were really successful in that we had these beautiful embryos, and the doctors were excited. I was 35 years old, and they're like, oh, you're going to have twins. Like, we can implant 2 embryos, and it's going to be wonderful. And I mean, we were over the moon. At this point, my parents were in their late 70s. This was their first grandchild. My husband had twins that ran in his family, so we're like, oh, this is great. And then you also have the scary part of IVF, which could be you could have 15 kids instead of 2. But, all that aside, we were excited. And so we were pregnant with twins, and we saw the ultrasound, and it was great. We see these 2 specks on the ultrasound that are wonderful and beautiful, and we think, we're going to have twins. So we start telling our family, oh, we're pregnant with twins. We couldn't hold that news from them. We were just too excited. So we did. And then at about 7 weeks, I had another ultrasound, and at that time, unfortunately, we could only see signs of life in 1 embryo and not both of them. And that was challenging. It was difficult because we had planned out our whole lives, what room the babies would sleep in, and, of course, what they would wear, and all the other things that you start planning when you know that you're having a child, or children. And so, it took some time, but we accepted it. We accepted that we had one child, we had one baby that was growing still, and that we were excited about. And so, in 10 weeks, I decided I was going to go to one of these boutique ultrasound places because I just wanted to see the baby again, and I was so excited. And this is something I struggled with because I worked with an OB practice, so I was like, I shouldn't do this, but I want to do it. So I did it. I wasn't ready to share it again, given that we were excited about 2 babies and now we have 1. So I did, and I remember I ate an orange because I wanted to see the baby moving on this ultrasound I was about to pay for. And so I get there, and the baby's moving around, and I remember that the baby's belly was very big. And I thought, it seems a little strange, but it's a 3D ultrasound, so I'm not going to think much of it. And these places that you go to, they're not physicians or trained medical staff. They're technicians, and so they're able to show you the baby, and that's it. And they tell you that. And so I remember the technician looking at me and saying, looking and saying, "You have an appointment, right, with a doctor?" And I was like, "Yes." And she's like, "Okay, good. When is it?" And I was like, "Oh, it's in 2 weeks." I'm like, "I'm going." And she's like, "Oh, okay." And then she didn't say anything else. And I knew that something was wrong, but she couldn't tell me what was wrong, or she probably didn't really know. She just knew something wasn't right. And so I go to my appointment 2 weeks later, and I find out that our baby had an encapsulation, and that means that during gestation, all the organs didn't go into the baby's stomach, and the abdomen didn't close the way that it should have. And this could be the sign of something more that's going on, or concern, or it may not be. But in our case, the doctors thought it was something more. And so they gave us the option to terminate at that time. And we chose not to because, again, I was 35, this was our first child, we had waited 8 years, we were just so excited to have a baby, and we also had faith. We knew that God can change any situation. And so we were worried about it, but we knew that God was telling us to continue on this journey. And so we did. And during the pregnancy, like I said, that was around 12 weeks when this began, and again, 17 weeks, 21 weeks. Each time we started going weekly to the doctor. Each time there were challenges, but the baby was getting bigger. And we could see that the baby was growing. And even when they're like, "Oh, the baby's head is small," or "its abdomen is big," or whatever was being told to us, we knew what God was telling us, which was to continue. Continue with the pregnancy. You know what I'm telling you. And so we did. And at 31 weeks, I gave birth spontaneously, early, to my son that we named Jacob. And the name Jacob came to me in a dream that I had during pregnancy, and I was just so sure. And I remember my husband was like, "I don't know about this name thing," but I remember when I gave birth, he just was like, "Okay, Jacob," that's his name. And Jacob, unfortunately, passed away after birth. So the concerns we had, that the doctors told us about, that they didn't know if he had kidneys, a lot of things that were told us that you just weren't sure of. And unfortunately, when he was born, he wasn't able to survive. But this is also where we understand where God is faithful. Because through that experience, I learned, one, that I could have a child, how to love a child, that I was able to hold my child after birth. All the things that I wouldn't have been able to do had I chosen to terminate. And I'm saying this for my experience. I'm not giving light to anyone else's. I'm saying this is what I needed at this time in my life, was to know what God was able to do for me and for my husband, for our family. I remember being able to see him get a bath. And for us, we stayed in the hospital for 4 days with our baby beside us. And we needed that time because when we left, we weren't able to take him home. But I saw God's faithfulness and all the actions that he brought me through to get me to where I am now and where I was then. I saw how God built community around us, a pastor, his wife, our friendships, like people here in the church who were there for us. They brought us meals. They prayed for us. They sat with us. They attended our child's funeral. And that's where I talk about God's faithfulness. Had I not experienced that, I wouldn't have known what God could do. And I placed all these markers in my life where, at this time I'd be doing this. And for me, I'm always a very fluid person. I can kind of go with the flow. So mine weren't specific, like at this age I'm going to be married, and at this age I'm going to have a baby, and et cetera, et cetera. For me, it was more of, I set markers of when I met people. So if I met someone and they had been married for 6 years and then had a baby, I'm like, oh, okay, I can wait 6 years, Or they were married I think I met one person who had been married for maybe 9 years and had a baby, and I was like, oh, yeah, that's fine. And I could wait 9 years if I have to. And so these marks just kept going up. And over time, I realized, and especially in this experience, that I just have to follow God's markers, okay? I can't follow anyone else's markers for my life because I'll never achieve those. But what God has will always come true for me. And so I just want to share with you one scripture that has, in this journey, been true for me, and I hope that you'll also find solace in, is Psalm 46:10. Be still and know that I am God. And so whatever happens in your life, whatever comes up in your life, just know, be still and I am God. It doesn't matter how the world is moving around you or even moving in you. Just know that God will always be there. And so I wanted to share one other thing with you. And so, we had our child in 2019, and then we decided to wait for a while before trying to have another child. And in 2022, we decided, we're ready to try again. And so we embarked on IVF again at this time. And I remember my husband was at work. We had gone to an appointment, and one of the first appointments, it wasn't great. Like my beta levels, my HGA levels were not going up as fast as they could have been, and so I had to go back and get testing again. And I remember my husband being at work, and as he was leaving work to come home, there was a rainbow over his car. And for him, rainbows have always been significant, and for me too, but we know with the Bible that they're very significant with God's promise. But he remember him seeing the rainbow over his car, and he took a picture, and he was like, I saw a rainbow. I know that everything's gonna be okay. And I remember even before that, I just had so much peace in this experience of having a child. And when we got home that day, we got home from an appointment, the rainbow was over our house. And it was even before we had known that my HGG levels had gone up. And it was such a blessing because through the whole pregnancy, God was faithful. That he just provided in every way. And even what we had planned of where I would deliver and when, and God had a different plan. And again, it was spontaneous and quick, but it was a blessing, and it returned a baby that we decided to name Leon Emmanuel Williams. And Leon means God has answered. Emmanuel, God with us. And we were so grateful for that. We had prayed about it and what we would name him. And so on April 12th, 2023, I gave birth to this son. And I remember that at that time, when we got home and brought Leon home, there was a rainbow again over our house. And my husband has a picture of it that he'll always show. You don't have to show right now, but but he'll always show of just, again, of God's promises and knowing that what God will do for you. So this is my husband, Ostranda, and this is our son, Leon, that came with us today. He had a long car ride. We were coming back from vacation, so he's he's not the happiest at the moment. But we're so grateful. But I just wanted to share that with you today, just to remember God's promises, that he will never leave you or forsake you, that he will be with you forever. He said, I will be with you forever. So thank you.